My name is Jan Morrison, and I will be your moderator. Just a little housekeeping for our participants. This session is scheduled for 45 minutes with questions answered only at the end of the presentation. At that time, the presenters will answer as many questions as possible, given the time allotted. You will not be able to speak during the session, but you may type and post your questions in the box at the bottom left side of the screen. They will be read aloud and answered by the presenter. Join our panel of authors from different parts of the Caribbean diaspora as they dig deep into their roots and share their thoughts about their journeys away from and back to those sacred places called home, their experiences as immigrants, and how these aspects of their lives are reflected in their works. Today, the first thing I want to talk about here is just talking about the roots that we have in our Caribbean heritage. What is it about Panama that creates that warmth, that feeling for you as home? Melissa, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. Thankfully, I do have the opportunity to go back home frequently, and I have roots in several islands. On my mom's side, Jamaica, St. Lucia, Grenada, Petite Martinique. On my dad's side, Barbados, except because migration is such a part of our diaspora, I wouldn't be surprised if Barbados is not the only island on my dad's side. That remains to be discovered, and it's something that I'm passionate about learning, ancestral history. And so I did grow up in Panama. So to go back home is to reconnect with family, with friends, places I used to frequent, with certain traditions that we only have an opportunity to somehow replicate in the countries that we moved to. But I get to experience it fully over there when it's a holiday. And even if it's not a holiday, but just to be with people and eat the foods that I can't find here. There's so many ways of feeling reconnected.
Yes, thank you. Hi, Ingrid, you're back.
Hi,
I wanted you to talk a little bit. Yes, thank you. I wanted you to talk a little bit about yourself right now. We know that you're from Trinidad and Tobago, but for the audience, can you share a little bit about what your circumstances are? And then I'd like you to just talk a little bit about what connects you to home. How do you feel? What are those feelings that make you feel home, connect you back to home?
Hi, thank you all for having me. I'm calling in from London, where it's 11 p.m. at night. So such a shame not to be in sunny California.
Thank you.
So I'm a Trini born, but I've lived in London sort of most of my adult life. I left Trinidad when I was 18. And for the last 13 years, I've been living between Barbados and London. So I've been living in sort of self-exile for all of my adult life. And it's an interesting place to be because you never belong. You no longer belong to the place that you were born because you have left for so long, and you don't necessarily belong to the place that you go to. So in Barbados, living there for 13 years, I'm still considered someone on the outside looking in. And I think in London, I can live here till I die and I will not be British. So I've made peace with that, and I view the embracing the non-belonging as actually an important position to be in, a powerful position to be in, because you're allowed to look in and with empathy. What connects me to home? And what is home? So I guess, Trinis have an expression, home is where your navel string buried. And I was born in San Fernando, which is a small town in Trinidad. And that's where my navel string's buried. So I feel that is home. And how do I connect to that place? I'm a writer, so I'm always going back in my work. I go back through simple things. I go back through the food, through the language. I don't physically get back nearly as much as I'd like to, but it lives in my heart, and it's the core of all my writing.
Thank you. Welcome. We have a new person who's joined us, Dr. Donna Aza Wylie Weir-Soley. I spelled it correctly. Hello and welcome.
Weir-Soley. Thank you, Jan. Thank you. Welcome, everyone, all of the attendees who are on here. Thank you for joining us. And thank you, Jan, for moderating this panel. Hi, Ingrid. Hi, Melissa.
Yeah, so we were just talking a little bit about who we were and what is our connection to our the place that we call home. Can you share a little bit about that?
For me, the connection is mostly through the people and the spirituality. That's where I connect the most with the culture, the people, the spirituality. The culture is broad, so the people and the spirituality, to narrow it down, is kind of where I find that I connect the most. And in some respects, the politics as well, right? Because that's an important part of our identity. So I find that I agree with Ingrid that you can't really go back home. It's like, it's an impossible dream to try to return to an impossible place that's mostly informed by nostalgia and memory. And memory is unreliable. So, you want to create a kind of an idea of what home was. But oftentimes I go home and I'm like, okay, there goes that idea. Home is different because home evolves and changes, and I evolve and change and transform. And the me that left Jamaica 37 years ago is not the me that returns, although parts of that me is still here and does go home and traverses the world as that little girl. But a lot of who I am now, it's a transformation of that little girl and an evolution of that little girl into someone else. So it's never going to be the same. So yeah, so it's a complex thing. But like Ingrid, I don't see that as necessarily a bad thing. I think it kind of gives me a certain kind of perspective to be both inside and outside simultaneously.
Yes, I agree with you. Yes, hello. We have another panelist who just joined us, Dr. Peniel Joseph. Hello, sir. How are you?
Hi, how are you doing? It's great to be here.
Yes. We are introducing ourselves. So we're talking about who we are. Dr. Joseph is from Haiti.
Yeah.
And I let you share about your current circumstances and just talk to us a little bit about how you connect your heritage, your roots to your home.
Yeah, no, I was born in the United States, and my mom left Haiti in 1965 as a political refugee, really.
Okay.
And so I actually have not been back to Haiti, even though I speak fluent Haitian, and I know how to cook Haitian food because of my mother. And I connect with it. My mother, my nieces, my nephews. I'm trying to teach my daughter, who's about to be 5, some Haitian words, and I think there's a way that we're gonna make sure that she speaks Haitian as well as English. So I mean, I connect largely through the history and through the culture. So I grew up in New York City, and my mother, gave us books about Haitian history and Toussaint Louverture and Jean-Jacques Dessalines and Boukman and Sanssouci and Jean Price Mars, the philosopher. We just really, and I really read Edwidge Danticat and Haitian authors. I've done a lot of teaching in Boston and Somerville in the Haitian community, and done different social justice activism connected to the Haitian earthquake, raised money, sent money. So I've written op-eds. I'm definitely interested in Haitian history and interested in Haitian, the connection between Haitian history and African American history too, because Haiti is so crucial as something that was very inspirational to Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth. They were very, very much aware of Haiti. Jamaica and Haiti have a good connection too, because Jamaica had so much what we call maroon society. Jamaicans are just like Haitians, just some of the fiercest freedom advocates ever. And these are people who, the Maroons were people in Jamaica and Haiti who walked around with machetes. And white folks knew not to mess with them because in Jamaica and Haiti, whites were the minority. So you had runaway societies of Maronage in Haiti and Jamaica, places that were fortified that white people just wouldn't go to. So they knew that if they went there, even if they could overpower some of those people, they would die too. And so it's very interesting, the Haitian history. And Haiti, not Cuba, is the first place the United States ever had an embargo again. It's Haiti. And then Haiti was occupied from around 1915 to 1934, and Americans bring in racial segregation into Haiti. They set up exclusive segregated beaches, and the military occupies Haiti. So I think Haiti gets a bad rap as sort of the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, and that poverty is based on wealth extraction from the United States, and that impacts the whole Caribbean, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, anywhere you are from in the Caribbean, whether it's the Antilles for the Dutch or the Francophone Caribbean, Spanish Caribbean, English Caribbean. These are beautiful countries that have so much rich natural resources, but they've been exploited from time immemorial, and they continue to be exploited. Just because a country, it could be, just because a country has a Black leader, woman or man, doesn't mean that they are good leaders for their people. It just means that that person looks like the people. And that this has happened in Guyana with Forbes Burnham. It happens all throughout the Caribbean. So I think Haiti gets a bad rap, and the Caribbean gets a bad rap as something that, white people just go and can just vacation in. But these places have really rich histories, and they continue to shape history, but people don't know those histories. They just want to come to the place, enjoy whatever they want to enjoy, and they just leave. And in Haiti's case, we have the most, I'll end by saying we have the most NGOs, non-governmental agencies, officials per capita than any other place in the world. Yet we have all this poverty because of the exploitation of finance capital in Haiti, including people like Bill Clinton and those folks who said that they were our friends, and they bought up all this land and stuff in Haiti. They own the best beaches in Haiti. They own the best property in Haiti, and they come under the guise of philanthropy. They say they're going to come and give you food, and they're going to give you, vaccines and medicine for AIDS, and they buy up the best parts of the entire country.
Well, Dr. Joseph, you opened up a whole lot of different avenues here. There's so much rich stuff that you just shared. I want to just kind of go back to one of the things that I was talking about. You've already touched on some of the things that you're doing. Even though you were not born there, you definitely have a very strong connection with your mom teaching you and exposing you to all of those things, and you taking it and moving forward. How has your heritage, and this is a question for everybody to talk about as I move around the panel. How has your heritage informed the things that you are doing currently?
My heritage absolutely informs every aspect of my work. As a clinician, I find that constantly learning about the history of marginalization in our diaspora shows up in the conversations I have in therapy with clients. And so it's important that I continue learning about my history so that I can listen to someone more deeply, and definitely listen to myself more deeply in the presence of their story. as a professor, it absolutely informs my work whenever I'm with students discussing historical trauma and how pain moves from one generation to the next. And because my history also is part of that, then I feel very connected to the importance of learning about it. It's important to learn about it in order to heal and move through the process of just survival mode into the realm of thriving. So that's another space in my work where this information moves me. Also, as part of community service that I am involved with, I belong to an organization called International Society of Black Latinos. And in fact, this year, we've been around for 10 years. And I'm so glad that it happened. Our president is Juanita Palacios Sims, and she started this idea because we constantly talked about how interesting it is to live in the US and have people stare at you when you speak Spanish because they're freaked out about it. They can't believe it's happening. Now, if I were in the East Coast, people would not even blink if I speak Spanish, but definitely in the West Coast. And so we all had all these different anecdotes about why people are surprised. And we decided, we need to make these teachable moments formalized. And that's how the organization started. And so we present workshops wherever we're called to do it, so that we can increase the awareness about the fact that our diaspora, in our diaspora, there are many, many stories that need to be heard. So yes, our heritage shows up in every aspect of my work. I can't escape it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Ingrid, would you share a little bit about how your heritage shows up and what you do?
Thank you. So like Melissa, my work is very much centered around my heritage. I'm a writer, full-time, a fiction writer, but I came to it via the scenic route. So in my first life, I was a lawyer because as the child of kind of lower middle class parents from a small town in Trinidad, you had three options. You could be a lawyer, a doctor, or a failure. So I went for the lawyer at first. I did that for a while, quite a long time. And then I sort of felt I really wasn't kind of harnessing my creativity. And in my 30s, I went back to school and I did fine art. I did a master's in fine art, and I was using a lot of text still. And then when we moved to Barbados, I kind of sort of lost my art community, my London art community of wearing black and feeling cool and going to art galleries. And so I had to do something else. And writing is the most sort of portable thing. And I used the writing. I decided to do a blog. So I did a blog called and I sort of committed to writing an essay once a week, published 900 words, published by 10 a.m. on a Friday. And what that did is it allowed me to engage with Barbados and to channel my creativity. And out of that has become a career in writing. So I've got my debut novel out. It's out in the UK already by Faber Press, but it'll be out in the US on the 4th of August. And it's called, just a small plug, Love After Love. So the novel Love After Love is based in Trinidad, and it is really a love letter to home. It's written in Trinidad English. The characters are Trini. It's not sentimental. It looks at the difficulties. So it's no paradise.
Okay, thank you, Ingrid. I think we kind of lost her a little bit. Dr. Aza, can you share a little bit about how your heritage is influencing your work?
Okay, so I found it interesting that Dr. Joseph talked about the Maroons in his introduction, because I am a Maroon. And my great-grandmother was a Maroon, so that's my grandmother's mother was a Maroon on one side. So I really feel like that part of my identity, that kind of urge, kind of almost an atavistic urge to resist. It's a part of that Maroon heritage. It feels like something that's just inborn within me. And I've had to figure out, how do I channel that in a positive, transformative way? And also, how do I translate that Maroonage, guerrilla warfare? How do I translate that in the world, for the world, for the academy, for the world, instead of always constantly knocking my head against the wall or standing against even folks who are much more powerful? What are the ways that you kind of negotiate, right, within those kinds of spaces? And because sometimes power can be very subtle, right? And people might not even be aware, right, of how power is being deployed. So you have, and against others. So you have to be very conscious, I feel, of how you're operating in certain spaces, because you can just get dismissed, undermined, and silenced, if you're not careful. So the point I'm trying to make is, I've had to kind of try to figure out, how do you resist in such a way that you don't get buried and dismissed? Right? How do you do that? And this is particularly relevant right now, given the time that we're in, because I would like to both resist and survive. Thank you very much. I would like to be able to do both. And I think we all would like to be able to do both. So I think in that sense, and I probably wouldn't have answered it in this way, but for Dr. Joseph. So thank you, Dr. Joseph, reminding me that some of the ways in which I'm difficult has to do with me being a Maroon. That's what it is. That's where it comes from. And it's not necessarily something to be ashamed of. It's something to embrace and to figure out how to channel. But certainly, so that side of it, the resistance side, the spirituality side, which is another form of resistance as well, is also another way in which I think that my relationship to my culture finds its way into my writing. I find I'm always writing about resistance. I'm always also writing about spirituality. And for a lot of people, those things seem like they're a contradiction or a paradox. But for me, it's not, because there's several levels on which one can resist. And spiritual resistance, I think, is even more powerful in some respects. I get into that later. But yeah, I think that my work is definitely informed by the language, by my people, as I said before, but also by some of the ways in which I was raised, some of the values that were kind of inculcated into me. I also find, though, that a lot of my training, my early training in college within the United States, has influenced my writing as well. I'm very woman-centered. I can write about the erotic, but I can also do a critique of history and politics. I can see myself as a whole, human being, and not compartmentalized, the way people like to kind of pigeonhole and label you and keep you in a little box to make themselves comfortable. I can break out of that box. I can allow myself to do that. And I think a lot of that has to do less with Jamaica in some ways, and a lot more to do with having come to this country at the age of 17, being involved with the Audre Lorde Women's Poetry Center at Hunter. I don't know if you guys know who Audre Lorde is, but if you do, then you'll understand the context, because I feel like I came to feminism through a very radical, but also very humane, very humanistic model of feminism that understood the need for everybody's humanity to be recognized, right? And I think I write from that space as well. And so, yeah, part of my identity has to do with having come here as a teenager. And so coming of age in this country as well has had a lot to do with who I am as a writer, with the topics that I can take on, and with the topics I feel comfortable with, and also with pushing myself beyond my comfort zone in my writing, because I do that quite a bit and get in trouble for that too.
Thank you. That's a lot. We don't have a whole lot of time, but I'm wondering if somebody can just tap on it. It doesn't have to be everyone, but I can't walk away without just talking about the times we're living in. We're living in a very, very, very interesting time right now when we're talking about COVID started this whole process, and then we found ourselves demonstrating globally about Black Lives Matter and affecting that everybody's lives matter. Talk to me, anybody that just has a couple of short things to just say before we leave here.
Yeah, I'll say that, and bringing on, building on Dr. Aza's talk, this idea of resistance. My new book is on Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. and
Hello?
Forward in the Field. And I think that we are at a time of critical, massive resistance against white supremacy, against anti-Black racism, for racial justice after the murders of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery. And, you know, we have too many martyrs to count. So I do think that we have a generational opportunity. People are marching in Washington, D.C. right now. It's 11 days straight. This is really a version of when we think about Tiananmen Square in 1989, these democracy protests, when we think about the Arab Spring, obviously the civil rights movement. And it's not just 1968, because they keep on talking, want to pigeonhole us with violence. But Black people did silent marches against lynching in the early 20th century. There were interracial civil rights demonstrations, Birmingham, Selma in the 1960s, anti-apartheid protests, and certainly Black Lives Matter. And really what Dr. Aza was saying with feminism, a big part of this, and I've been a student of Black feminism since 1993 with my mentor, Sonia Sanchez. So it's been 27 years of reading, studying Black feminism. Black feminists have been hugely influential in the movements we're seeing for intersectional justice. So much of, and Dr. Aza talked about Audre Lorde and people like Barbara Smith, the Combahee River Collective, Toni Cade Bambara, the idea of intersectional justice, Barbara Ransby, Patrice Kahn-Cullis, so many, Patricia Hill Collins, so many Black and Caribbean women have been a big part of this. Malcolm X's mother was from Grenada, so Malcolm is Caribbean. Louise Norton Little, who really influenced him. So we're seeing all that on the streets right now, along with white allies, Black queer women, and really an understanding that Black is global. So it's going to include people who are from Trinidad, from Pakistan, from Latin America, from South America, from Brazil, you know, in that sense. But we say Black Lives Matter because we know white supremacy has denigrated them, but you're trying to say Black Lives Matter as something that's universal, but through the particular struggle of Black people, because if Black people achieve citizenship and dignity, all people are going to achieve it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a rich conversation. We could go on for hours, but unfortunately we have to stop and take some chat, some questions from the chat. So if you give us a few minutes here, the Q&A. We have here a question from Lisa G. Have the works of the legendary icon Kamala Brathwaite influenced any of the authors on the panel, and in what manner?
Yeah, I'd say Kamala Brathwaite and his brother, they're part of the Black Power movement's cultural arm, AJAZ, Grandasa model, and they're really getting a bigger look now with the Soul of a Nation museum exhibition. I've taught that in my Black Power graduate seminar. So Kamala Brathwaite, Alambre Brathwaite, these folks were geniuses, and we have a bunch of Black women who were geniuses, who are part of the Black arts movement, who weren't getting their due. And we have a generation now that's finally getting their due. They can make a living, they can write. And it's not just, we have a ton of Toni Morrison in the Black community. We really do. And Toni Morrison was a certifiable genius, but she's not the only one. We have Toni Morrison's, we have Faith Ringgold, the artist, we have Kamala Brathwaite. We have so many who couldn't make a living because of racism and white supremacy in the United States. These are artists on par with any of the great white classical artists and modern artists ever. But they couldn't make a living, and their genius was denied, right? And so Brathwaite is finally getting his due. And part of the Black Power, we just saw the Guggenheim just hired their first Black woman curator, and she's saying, you guys are anti-Black racists and white supremacists because we've been doing the work. It's just like, Ingrid is doing, and I've read the review of her novel in The Guardian, and she's won all these short story prizes. The Man Booker Prize, we should have won all of them. You know what I mean? The Man Booker Prize, because we've got that kind of talent. You know what I mean? And we don't get that love just because we're Black, just because we're Black. So you produce this genius stuff, and then you have white critics who are dominating, and then they ignore your stuff. So Dr. Aza was talking about us being silenced. So much of what's silenced is pure genius. So much of it is Black women. Alambre and Kamala Brathwaite were some Black men who were extremely talented, and we're finally getting our due. And I think these protests, you're going to see it's the tip of the iceberg, because the only reason you've seen all this white art get praised so much, they win the Man Booker Prize, the Pulitzer Prize, they haven't had to compete with us. They've set up a game where they're the only one, not only because they marginalize and exclude us, they actually exploit and denigrate us. They make sure that you actually can't get in the game. It's truly extraordinary. Their success, all the white authors, their success is based on our submission and our subordination. They go hand in hand. It's not that we're missing in action. They make sure you're not going to be at the university. You're not going to get tenure. You're not going to be part of the Man Booker Prize, just so they can be elevated. And so part of the marches in the street is for that, so we can finally make a living and have access to the genius that we've been producing for centuries.
Us who were able to get in. Elsie, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here. I'm listening. I can see you guys.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I wanted to give you a voice before we leave. Would you share a little bit about what you're thinking? Anything at all? We'll throw you in here in terms of what you're doing. How does your work reflect your culture? Elsie is from Haiti. Talk to us a little bit about it, Elsie.
Yes, indeed. I was born in Haiti, and I lived there until I was 11. Then my parents brought me here. It wasn't my choice. That was their decision. But I have to say that every time I stepped back inside our home, I was back in Haiti with the language that we spoke, the food that we ate, the music that my parents listened to, and the cultural values that they instilled in us, like kissing everyone on the cheek when you enter a room full of relatives. Yes, you can relate, right?
Yeah.
And I adapted quite easily to my new life in the United States, probably because it's easier for children to adopt than it is for adults. And I must stress the fact that because it was in the 60s, people were a bit more tolerant about accepting others. And I have to emphasize the fact that because of the 1965 Immigration Act, there was a large number of new immigrants coming from South America and the Caribbean. And it was also the beginning of bilingual education in this country. So when my parents went to register me in a neighborhood public school in Manhattan's Upper West Side, they just assumed that I was Hispanic. I'm not sure why. So they enrolled me in a bilingual class where everyone was a Latino immigrant. So as a result, I was struggling with English and Spanish at the same time. and was open to various cultures. And well, what else? It was an international life for me, and I gonna say that it was because of that experience that I became a language major. Um, well, all my life I've been surrounded by bilingual, like living in Haiti. There was French and there was Creole. So it was already a bilingual experience, bicultural and transnational life. And what else? Outside of school, the Haitian Community Center was basically my social life. And thanks to President Johnson's war on poverty, the center received a generous amount of money that allowed them to organize like trips to Washington, day trips to the beach, etc. And my first contact with white America, I would say, or white people for that matter, because I was always with immigrants. So in a way, that was good because I didn't feel lost. You know, everyone was an immigrant. Everyone was learning English, and but things changed when I got to Middlebury College in Vermont, where a good majority of the students were WASP. I had Christina Lingberg, Charles Lingberg's granddaughter, as a classmate, Eileen Rockefeller, Rebecca Kellogg, etc. But I didn't feel isolated simply because we were out of 3,000 students, there were just 27 minority students, and that included 5 of Hispanic backgrounds and 3 Africans who did not consider themselves immigrants because they were going to go back home when this was all over. And it was at Middlebury that I became conscious of my accent, and somehow with my classmates, like the Lingberg, etc., I was like deprived economically compared to them, and it was also during that time at Middlebury that I developed a desire to learn more about Haiti. So because they were always asking me questions, I was the only Haitian in the school. So I was called upon quite frequently to represent. So I wanted to discover more about Haiti. So I started to read about Haiti. And my sophomore year, the summer of my sophomore year, I returned to Haiti to visit family. But I became more of an observer. When I was living there, I just took everything for granted. And that's when I started questioning the way things are done. And beyond understanding, I wanted to know why it is so. And after Middlebury, I was ready for a Black experience. So I enrolled in graduate school at Howard University and received a grant, a summer grant that allowed me to travel throughout the country, where I was exposed to, I made it a point to attend voodoo ceremonies and other cultural manifestations. In my novel, The Roving Tree, the protagonist's experience is quite different from mine because she was adopted. It is the story of a 5-year-old Haitian girl adopted from the countryside, I must stress, adopted by wealthy upper class Americans.